for Christ. One such example is found in the book of Exodus. This man was stripped from everything his people knew and was raised by foreigners. This man is named Moses, and here is his story. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the back of the desert and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire from the midst of a bush. So he looked and beheld, the bush was burning with fire, but the bush was not consumed.
I will turn aside to see the strange sights, why this bush is not burning.
So when the Lord saw that he turned aside to look, God called to him from the midst of the bush.
Moses, Moses.
Here I am.
Do not draw near this place. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place where you stand is holy ground. I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob.
And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon God.
I have surely seen the oppression of my people who are in Egypt, and I have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. For I know their sorrows. So I have come down to deliver them from the hand of the Egyptians. Come now, therefore, and I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt.
Who shall I say sent me?
I am who I am. Thus you shall say to the children of Israel, I am has sent me to you.
How shall I do this alone?
You will not be alone, for I am with you, but I will send your cousin Aaron to speak on your behalf.
So Moses and Aaron went into Pharaoh, and they did so, just as the Lord commanded. And Aaron cast down his rod before Pharaoh and before his servants, and it became a serpent. But Pharaoh also called the wise men and the sorcerers, so the magicians of Egypt, they also did in like manner with their enchantments. For every man threw down his rod, and they became serpents. But Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods. And Pharaoh's heart grew hard, and he did not heed them, as the Lord had said.
There is only one true God, but the Egyptians believed there were different gods in charge of different things. The first plague that God sent upon Egypt was the changing of the water into blood. In Egypt, there was a river called the Nile. Every year, the river would flood onto the land. This flood brought water and good soil to the Egyptians' crops. They believed the god of this flood was called Hapi. This plague directly affected the function of Egyptian culture. Their entire society was based upon the Nile. God used this plague to display his omnipotence.
My magicians can do this too. Yes. Good, good.
Thus says the Lord, you shall let my people go.
No, I will never.
The Egyptians also believed in a god of fertility, which was symbolized by a frog. The god's name was Hecate. God displayed his glory.
Egyptians were gnats from the earth's dust, and this was directly related to the Egyptian god Get.
The fourth plague that God sent upon the Egyptians was the plague of flies, and they believed that the god in charge of this was the god Kebri.
The fifth plague that God sent upon the Egyptians was that of the death of cattle and livestock, and this was directly related to the Egyptian god Hathor.
Well, at least we still have cattle to eat. Perhaps some beef sandwiches and some hamburgers.
Wake up, wake up! All the cattle, it is all gone. It is dead.
The sixth plague that God sent upon the Egyptians was the ashes turned into boils and sword, and this was directly related to the god Isis.
Weak people.
Please stop.
You're weak.
Please.
Leave my face. Discipline.
The seventh plague that God sent upon the Egyptians was hail in the form of fire, and this directly related to the Egyptian god Nut.
The eighth plague that God sent upon the Egyptians was the locusts sent from the sky, and this was directly related to the god Seth.
Oh wait, no, there's locusts. Where are my crops? I'm not gonna have any food anymore.
The next plague that God sent upon the Egyptians was 3 days of complete darkness, and this related to the Egyptian god of Ra, who was the god of the sun. While the Egyptians lived and stumbled in darkness for 3 days, the Israelites were still able to go about their day-to-day tasks.
The 10th and final plague that God sent upon the Egyptians was the death of Pharaoh's firstborn.
My son! He's dead! You may leave. Go now. Go. Tell them to leave. Tell them to leave. All of them.
Yes, yes. Everyone. Leave our country.
Come, Israelites, follow me.
After David killed the giant Goliath, he became good friends with Jonathan, King Saul's eldest son. 1 Samuel 18:3-4. And Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as himself. Jonathan took off the robe he was wearing and gave it to David, along with his tunic and even his sword, his bow, and his belt.
1 Samuel 1:5. David marched out with the army and was successful in everything Saul sent him to do.
David was promoted by Saul to command Israel's armies, and he won many battles.
1 Samuel 1:7-9. As they danced, the women sang, Saul has killed thousands, but David his tens of thousands. Saul was furious and resented this song. They credited tens of thousands to David, he complained, but they only credited me with thousands. What more can he have with the kingdom? So Saul watched David jealously from that day forward.
David began to outshine King Saul, and King Saul worried about the young hero's growing fame. Obsessed with the fact that David had gained more renown with the people than he had, Saul became vengeful and jealous. Conflict between David and Saul caused Jonathan to act as a mediator between his closest friend and his father.
Dear God, I pray that you would change Saul's heart towards my friend. Protect David from Saul. Provide refuge for David in the wilderness. Amen.
1 Samuel 19:1-7. Saul ordered his son Jonathan and all his servants to kill David. But Saul's son Jonathan liked David very much. So he told him, My father Saul intends to kill you. Be on your guard in the morning, then hide in a secret place and stay there. Jonathan spoke well of David to his father Saul. Saul listened to Jonathan's advice and swore an oath. As surely as the Lord lives, David will not be killed. Then Jonathan brought David to Saul, and he served him as he did before.
Kill David.
No, Father, you should not kill David. Consider all the good he has done for this kingdom.
First Saul 19:9-10. Now an evil spirit sent from the Lord came on Saul as he was sitting in his palace holding a spear. David was playing the lyre, and Saul tried to pin David to the wall with the spear. As the spear struck the wall, David eluded Saul, ran away, and escaped that night.
I'm David. You must stay beside the rock Ezel. I will shoot 3 arrows beside it as if I'm aiming on a target. Then I will send a servant and say, Go find the arrows. Now if I expressly say to the servant, Look, the arrows are this side of you. Go get them. And then, because it is safe for you, though there is no problem. But if I say to you, to them, Look, the arrows are behind you, then go. The Lord is sending you away.
First Samuel 20:27. However, the day after the new moon, the second day, David's place was still empty.
Why didn't Jesse's son come to desert either yesterday or today?
David asked for my permission to go to Bethlehem. That's why he didn't come to the king's table.
Every day Jesse's son lives on earth. You and your kingship are not secure. Now send for him and bring him to me. He must die.
Why is he to be killed? What has he done?
First Samuel 20:35. In the morning, Jonathan went out to the countryside for the appointed meeting with David. A young servant was with him.
Go, fetch the arrows. The arrow's behind you, isn't it? Hurry up, go get them. Bring it back. Now go, take it to the city. Go, in the assurance of the two of us are pledged together in the name of the Lord when we said, The Lord will be a witness between you and me, and between my offspring and your offspring forever.
Jonathan's story teaches us to trust the will of God when faced with hard choices. He was courageous, loyal, wise, and honorable. He knew Samuel had anointed David to be the next king of Israel. Although Jonathan had a claim to the throne, he recognized God's favor was with David. When the hard choice came, Jonathan acted on his love for David and respect for the will of God. How can you be like Jonathan and respect God's will in your life?
Daniel, performed by the House of Daniel, is based on the Book of Daniel, adapted by L. Crane and Abby Gilbert, directed by Rainey Evie.
story of Daniel's life was eventful and contained many different historical and prophetic accounts. In 605 BC, Jerusalem was taken by Nebuchadnezzar. As a result, Daniel and many other teens, including his 3 close friends, were taken to the palace. After 3 years of training, in 602 BC, Nebuchadnezzar had a prophetic dream of a statue. Daniel interpreted it and was given great prestige. However, soon after that, the king asked his friends to worship a false idol.
My subjects, I have made a great idol for you to worship. Bow down before it. I said to bow. If you do not worship it, you will be thrown to the furnace. Look, who is that?
Praise the Lord, for he has saved us. The Lord has delivered us.
Belshazzar had a great feast for 1,000 of his lords. He brought in many riches and much wine from the Jewish temple. They praised their gods when suddenly a hand appeared on the wall.
Somebody interpret it! Whoever does, I will give them much riches and the gold chain and a purple cape! Sorry. Let's make Daniel interpret it.
King and lords of Babylon, I do not want your prizes, but I will interpret this writing. See, it means the end of the Babylonian Empire as you know it. You have not honored God.
Some time after the feast, jealous administrators plotted against Daniel.
Daniel has found too much favor with the king. We must find something against him.
There's no hope of finding anything against Daniel unless it is with this God.
The king must issue a decree banning worship of any other god or man other than the king. O King Darius,
live forever. The administrative officials have agreed that you should sign a decree saying that anyone for the next 30 days who worships any other god or man other than you shall be thrown into the lion's den.
I agree to these terms, and I shall make this a law.
Despite the evil law, I will still worship the Lord my God.
Have you seen that Daniel prays to his God 3 times a day and does not follow the law of King Darius?
You must tell him immediately.
O King Darius, live forever. Have you not issued a law saying that if anyone worships any other god or man other than you shall be thrown into the lion's den?
I have, and this decree stands.
Well, Daniel, who you have made equal to us, still prays to his God 3 times a day.
Daniel, I do not wish to do this to you, but I must keep my word. May your God, who you continually serve, deliver you from the lion's den. Guards, I shall not sleep or eat tonight, for I fear for Daniel. Daniel, Daniel, has your God you can continually serve delivered you from the lion's den?
O king, live forever. My God sent his angels and shut the mouths of the lions.
Guards, get out here and take Daniel from the lion's den, and throw those traitors that betrayed Daniel into the lion's den, and all of their families.
I have found favor in the sight of my Lord and my God.
Today, I make a decree that to all my kingdoms and dominion, that all my people will bow down and fear the Lord my God, the God of Daniel.
This is the story of God's prophet Elijah. God used Elijah to do many miracles and show his glory and grace. As we share parts of Elijah's story, you will see that God is just, he protects, he is faithful, and he is all-powerful. Our story starts with Ahab becoming king of Israel. He reigned over Israel for 22 years. Ahab did more evil in the eyes of the Lord than any of the kings of Israel before him. He married Jezebel of the Sidonians and built altars to the false god Baal. God sent Elijah the Tishbite to Ahab to warn him of his sin.
As the Lord, the God of Israel lives, whom I serve, there will be neither dew or rain in the next few years, unless I say so.
What? Who do you think you are? You can't make that happen.
Elijah, leave here and go hide where I show you. I will send ravens to feed you during the drought in the land.
God was just, and the land suffered through a drought. Elijah did as the Lord commanded. God protected him, and he was fed in the wilderness by ravens who brought him food. From there, the Lord sent him to the town of Zarephath to a widow. Widows were the poorest of the poor, so again, God showed his love and faithfulness by using her to sustain Elijah.
Will you bring me a little water and a jar so I'm not going to drink it? And bring me a little bread.
As surely as the Lord God lives, I do not have any bread. Only a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. I gathered a few sticks to take home and make a meal for myself and my son, so that we may eat it and die.
Don't be afraid. Go and do as you have said. Go and do as you have said. But first, make a small loaf of bread for me. And then make something for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. There will be no... Sorry. The jar of flour will not be... the jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord sends rain on the land.
She went away and did as Elijah had told her. So there was food every day for Elijah and for the woman and her family. For the jar of flour was not used up, and the jug of oil did not run dry, in keeping with the word of the Lord spoken by Elijah. God continued to perform miracles through Elijah, including raising a woman's son from the dead when Elijah cried out to God. Finally, in the 3rd year, the word of the Lord came to Elijah.
Elijah, go and present yourself to Ahab, and I will send rain on the land.
Is that you, O troubler of Israel?
I have not been troubled for Israel, you and your father's house.
Elijah tells Ahab that he has made trouble by abandoning the Lord's commands and following the Baals. He then tells Ahab to summon the people from all over Israel to meet him at Mount Carmel.
Now therefore, send and gather all Israel to me on Mount Carmel, the 450 prophets of Baal, and the 400 prophets of Asherah, the Jezebel street.
All of the prophets of Baal, come and assemble on Mount Carmel.
And then Elijah spoke to the people of Israel, reminding them of the promises they had made to God about not taking on the evil ways and gods of the people in the promised land. He said,
How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him.
But the people said nothing. Then Elijah went on to tell the people that he is the only one of the Lord's prophets left, but Baal has 450 prophets. He tells them to get 2 bowls and let Baal's prophets choose one for themselves and let them cut it into pieces and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. Then he will prepare the other bowl and put it on the wood. Then they can call on the name of their God, and Elijah will call on the name of the Lord. The God who answers by fire, he is God.
Well spoken.
Prophets of Baal. She's one of the bowls prepared first, since there are so many. Call on the name of your God. Do not let the fire.
This went on from morning until noon.
Shout louder. Surely he is a God.
Baal, answer us!
Or be child. Maybe he is sleeping and must be awake.
Baal, answer us!
The prophets slashed themselves with swords and spears, as was their custom, until their blood flowed. Midday passed as they continued their frantic prophesying until the time for evening sacrifice. But there was no response, and no one answered. No one paid attention.
Come here, Jimmy. Fill 4 large buckets of water and pour them over the offering. Do it again. Do it again. Lord,
the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel. Let it be known today that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again.
Then the fire of the Lord fell and burned up the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and the soil, and also dried up the water in the trench.
Lord, he is God! Lord, he is God!
Seize the prophets of Baal. Now let one of them escape.
God then sent rain on the land and protected Elijah as he ran and hid from Ahab and Jezebel. He went on to perform other miracles as God watched over him. And later, when it was time for Elisha to serve as the next prophet, God sent a fiery chariot and took Elijah up into heaven into a whirlwind. God is a true hero of Elijah's story. He showed his justice, his protection, his faithfulness, and his power. Read more for yourself in 1 Kings 17 through 19 and 2 Kings 2.